Hey, welcome to A Valiant Effort. I'm Ted, and today we're doing a Should I Buy on the first generation Ford Focus. So as with every car, there are certain model years and things to avoid, whether it be because of certain engines or transmissions or recalls or whatever. So we kind of want to go through and look at the entire generation. So the one I'm sitting in currently is a 2002 Ford Focus wagon. It's the SE, and it has the 2-liter Z-Tech motor. We'll get into that in a minute. These were sold from 2000 to 2007. They came with 3 different motors. Well, 4 really, as far as the standard model is concerned. There was a motor for the ST and the SVT Focus throughout those years. So we're not going to be talking about the engines in the high-performance models, the SVT and the ST Focus, just the 4 regular engines that you would get with a typical Focus. So the first one is the 2-liter split-port injection. It's a single overhead cam engine. It's got 110 horsepower, 125 foot-pounds. It's not very powerful. Feels good with the manual transmission, but it's not very powerful, and it has the most problems. So we'll get into that in a second. But it comes standard in the LX and SE sedans all the way through 2004. And it also came standard in the wagons just for the 2000 model year. So the issue with the split-port injection motor is that it isn't very powerful, but it can be very reliable. The problem is I don't know if I would take that risk because they do have a common failure, which is dropping valve seats. That's a catastrophic failure. That's bye-bye engine. They also have some coil pack failures and stuff, but that's not a huge deal. That can be easily remedied with a new part. Valve seat failure is, like I said, it's new motor or a rebuild, and that just isn't in the budget for most people. So we recommend at this point in the life cycle of the car, with it being 20 years old, from the earliest models, just stay away from the split port. So the next motor is the 2-liter double overhead cam Z-Tech E, not the Z-Tech R that came in the SVT Focus. This one's a little more down on power. It's got 127 horsepower, 135 foot-pounds, and it came standard on the ZX3, ZX5, ZTS, and all wagon models after the 2000 model year. And also, through 2004, you could get it as an option in all SE model sedans. So really, it ended up being the more popular motor, and that's pretty good because it is probably one of the best motors offered for this car. The only thing you have to know is that there is a timing belt every 80 to 100,000 miles, and that the thermostats often go bad. That's pretty much it. They're a really solid motor. So the last 2 motors here are the 2 and 2.3 liter Duratec motors. Now the 2.3 is not the same 2.3 that was in the 2005 to 7 Focus ST. It's just kind of like with the Z-Tech, it's the standard version of that engine. It was pretty powerful though. It had 145 horsepower, 149 foot-pounds. And it was the optional engine in 2003 only in California, Mass, New York, Vermont, and Maine, and then you could get it as an option in all US states in 2004. Now, the more common one, which you'll find in most 2005 to 2007 cars, is the 2-liter, which had 136 horsepower, 133 foot-pounds, and it was standard on all 2005 to 2007. So this is the common one for that era, and really, no known problems with this. It's a really solid engine. Highly recommend timing chain too, so you don't have to worry about timing belts or anything. If you wanted this slightly newer, better performing car with a more normal interior, the 05 to 07s are a really good choice. So as far as transmissions go, the first gen Focus had 3. There was one automatic that spanned the whole life cycle of the car. It was the 4F27E. 4-speed auto with overdrive, decent transmission, just change your fluid and filter, it should be fine. A lot of them last a long time. Now the split port had its own manual. It was a 5-speed. It's a little crunchier and kind of clunkier than the manual that came with the Z-Tech and the Duratec, but also pretty fine. But again, we don't recommend that motor, so chances are you won't experience that manual. Now the manual that came with the Z-Tech and the Duratec was the same again throughout the life of the car. Is the MTX 75, also a 5-speed. No serious issues with that either. They're very nice. I actually prefer them to the IB5. I've driven both, and I think it's a little slicker, a little nicer. But all the transmissions for the first gen are actually pretty good, pretty durable. Just make sure you change the fluid, and if it's the automatic, fluid and filter, and you should be fine. So really, we recommend not buying the split port injection motor because it's just, it has those problems with the valve seats, and it's just not really worth the risk at this point. My friend did have a 2000 with the SPI motor, and he got like 260,000 miles on that thing. It had a manual transmission. I'll show a clip of me driving it right here. To the old garage to get it looked at by me. It's a pretty quick little thing. I mean, I'm going 35, but quick, relatively speaking. Feels nice. So it was a nice little car, but you just don't want to test your luck when you're buying something at this price point. Get the Z-Tech, get the Duratech, and you really should be okay. So as far as ease of maintenance goes, these cars are really easy to work on. Now, I don't think that they're as easy to work on as the Toyota or Civic of that era. The engine bay just isn't quite as open, but there's still plenty of room to work. Even if you're working on a Z-Tech with the timing belt, the engine that actually has the most space is the split port motor, but again, we don't really recommend getting that. But if you do get it, it's even easier to work on. There's even more space. Now, as far as the Z-Tech goes, that engine, again, easy to work on. It's got a coil pack with the plug wires going to the plugs, and the Duratech has coil-on plug. Both really easy to deal with. With the Z-Tech, you'll just have to replace those plug wires every, whatever the interval is, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 miles. So from 2000 to 2004 on the front brakes, these have an 8mm Allen key to pull off the caliper pins on the front. So if you're doing pads or rotors or whatever, you're just going to want to have an 8mm Allen socket. They're cheap. You can buy a whole set of them, and I recommend having a set anyway, because some cars have weird stuff like that. In 2005, they ended up going to a 15mm bolt, 6-point socket, so, or 6-point bolt, whatever. And those are, a little easier. But as far as everything else goes, I mean, this car doesn't have a whole lot that's very special in the sense that, you need a certain tool or something to work on. Everything that I've done has been really easy. Whatever, air filter, cleaning the throttle body, spark plugs, plug wires, brakes. I did the thermostat. We'll have a DIY. Oil changes are pretty easy, although you want to know that the oil filter's in a really awkward spot. It's going to drip everywhere. It's a stupid design, but you know what? It's not that hard to get to. You just kind of reach your arm up around, and I'll show a little clip of that in a second. But other than that, it's really not that bad. I've enjoyed working on this, and if you are kind of an average DIY person, you're okay with brakes, and keep in mind the drums. There are drums in the rear, so that's a different ball game than disc brakes, which I think are easier to work on anyway. But yeah, these things aren't that hard, and if you want to get into doing DIY stuff with a basic set of tools, including those Allen bolts, then yeah, get in there, and the Focus is a good car to start with. So one thing to note though, these cars, they're not known for braking, but they do not hold up to abuse. So if you're the type of person who abuses your car, just get a Corolla, get a Camry, because these really don't hold up well to it. And this one is a prime example of that. This wasn't taken especially good care of in the past. The current owner takes good care of it. They rust really easy, so you gotta get them washed. They really do rust. And for those of you guys who have Ford trucks, you know what I'm talking about. This one's turning into dust as we speak. Okay, so just to quickly go over the common problems, rust, like I just said. Also, motor mounts tend to go bad. It's very obvious when they do. The motor mounts on this particular car went bad, I believe more than once. It's a pretty cheap fix, and actually most people could probably do it themselves. Also, EGR valve and thermostats are parts that tend to be on the weaker side, so just watch out for those. Make sure you're changing your coolant every 40,000 miles. Keep an eye out for smells. Just be aware. These cars need attention, and they need owners to be attentive to them. Cam seals and wheel bearings, less common, but sometimes they do go bad. But also, if you're doing the timing belt on the Z-Tech, you could do the cam seals while you're in there. And then wheel bearings are not a huge deal. So just keep those things in mind. Make sure you're getting the maintenance done. Like I said, these cars don't hold up super well to abuse, so you've got to take care of them. But if you do, they really will reward you with a long life. So if you're looking for a good first car for your kid, or you just need something cheap to get you through the next couple of years, these cars are terrific for that. They're cheap, they're pretty reliable, they're cheap to maintain as well, and they get good gas mileage. Okay, so let's talk performance, and this isn't performance, this is really driving experience. You know, what is it like to drive one of these? Because that's important to know when you're shopping for a car, but don't, again, like I said before, please have no expectations of performance, even with the stick. Now, this is the automatic, and I will say the automatic very much stays out of your way. It dulls the car quite a lot compared to the manual, and you know, that's just how automatics of this era are. But one thing I like about the automatics from this era is that they are true to their name in the slush box sense. So what I mean by that is that they kind of just slip and slide into the right gear. They don't jerk around a lot. It's very smooth shifting. One thing to note though, if you're getting an automatic, they are slower, and so if you really need, not everybody's going to feel super comfortable with a 130 horsepower engine, especially with the wagon. The wagon is a little bit heavier, but the wagon is super freaking useful. I mean, the owner of this car is currently moving some stuff, as you can see, and it fits a lot of stuff in here. It's a pretty big car for what it is. I'm going to put my window up here. So I'll give you a sense of what I mean about the gearing. So here, if I put my foot down a little bit. See, no herka-jerka, just kind of shifts through gears real nice. You definitely have to put your foot down to get it to kick down. It likes to stay in the highest gear possible. But that's also why, you get 31 miles to the gallon. It's a very, very economical car, especially given the price. So you're going to buy this, and you're going to daily it, right? Because that's what you would be buying a car like this for. I think, and I'll be very honest with you, I think this feels like kind of a sporty driving experience. Now, obviously, it's not really sporty. It just isn't. It's an economy car. But it's got a nice hydraulic steering rack that gives you pretty good communication. You can feel what's going on. It's pretty tight. Even this car, which has been beat to hell, it's still very tight, and it still feels very secure. You feel secure behind the wheel. You can kind of toss it into a corner. And if you get a manual one, they're pretty fun. But for the average person, what they are is fairly confidence-inspiring. You don't feel like there's any vagueness with the chassis or the steering. The throttle is pretty responsive. It is throttle, a cable throttle, so it's very, it immediately does what you ask it to do. It's a naturally aspirated engine, so do keep that in mind. You got to get it to kick down, otherwise you're going to have no power, or you got to downshift if you're in the manual. Is it comfortable? Yeah, it's definitely comfortable. There's not a ton of lumbar, but the way the seat kind of fits to your body, it kind of does have some support down there. I've driven this car on 2-3 hour journeys, and I've been very comfortable. I don't find it as comfortable as, say, my Honda or the new Honda that we drove, or Nick's S4, but it's nice. It's really nice, especially for the price. In these cloth, the cloth, it's kind of old Ford cloth, but it's pretty easy to clean. They're soft. They're really soft. So if you're wearing shorts, nice and soft. And again, long journeys, not a problem in this car. And you're getting 31 miles to the gallon, all in a package that's about, $2,500 to $3,500 for a good one. One thing that's weird, you don't have a tack in most of these. Some of them you do, but the manual 2000 that I drove, it didn't have a tack, and I just think that's really weird for a manual car. I mean, you don't need it in the auto, but I would like to see what the engine's doing. Like what RPM is it turning at 65 miles an hour? Yeah, it's pretty quiet in here. There's definitely wind noise, there's road noise. It's not a luxury car, but it's definitely, you can have a conversation in here just fine. Yeah, all the controls, simple, radio's fine. The speakers are kind of, but again, what can you ask for with a $2,500 car? Not a whole lot these days, not a whole lot. So final verdict, easy to maintain, cheap to buy, cheap to fix, decent to drive. Go buy a Focus. If you want. You don't have to. Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our podcast on Spotify. It's AVE Automotive Podcast. And also check out our merch store on Etsy. We've got some mugs and some shirts. Everybody likes shirts. A mask, right in time for the mask mandate to be lifted. So, thanks for watching. Yeah, the radiators, you drain it, easy. Thermos